Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, a new home for veterans. Also, the V-Team takes a look at opposition to the I-10 toll bridge and gays, wife swapping, and Andy Griffith hit the campaign trail in the U.S. Senate race.
Remember, dear readers, you heard it here first. Off the record, on the QT, and very hush, hush.
Shazam! All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
There is a storm a-brewing off the city of Mobile. Last year, during the session, the Alabama legislature voted overwhelmingly to approve a toll bridge that would connect with I-10, that would knock down the crazy congestion between Mobile and getting to the coast. There was no uproar, there was no outrage, except a small puff of green smoke that came out of the ears of Jim Ziegler, who is always looking for some issue that will put him in the spotlight. Well, Mr. Ziegler started a Facebook page, and over time, it has grown. Now, I went back, and a year ago, the Orange County mayor and the Gulf, the Gulf Shores mayor?
Yeah, Orange Beach.
Orange Beach,
yeah.
Gulf Shores mayor, all explained that back then, a year ago, the only people that were griping was a handful of people and, Josh, the people that owned the competing toll bridge who wanted the state to buy that toll bridge. So now, over the last week...
Seems like a good gripe for them, by the way.
Yeah, over the last week, Bradley Byrne, everybody who's
Roy
running...
Moore.
Yeah, Roy
Everybody's
Moore.
running.
Everybody is now against it. It's a communist, liberal plot to charge the hard-working people of Alabama a toll to cross the bridge.
Number one, this is not a liberal plot. All of those people who voted for that were conservatives, okay? All of them, yes. I'm against toll roads in general, all right? I mean, I don't think they have a good place. I don't think that, I understand why people use tolls to kind of divert traffic into different areas and make people kind of stay off of roadways. But that doesn't really seem to be what's taking place here. I mean, it just basically seems like a money grab for somebody. They saw some congestion, they're gonna put a road up, and they're gonna make some money off of it. And I just feel like once we've passed a gas tax, here, build the road, ease the congestion, and give people a better life. I mean...
That is such a liberal point of view, isn't it? That nobody's got to pay for their stuff.
That's not what
I just don't understand why everybody's so upset about a bridge you don't have to take. You don't have to take it.
You don't have to
the
take
causeway.
any of these roads.
It's going to add 40 minutes onto your drive. So what? It's free.
40 minutes?
You want
If you take the causeway, yeah, it can take you 2 hours to your drive.
Yeah. You want to complain? Don't complain like you don't have a choice.
What's different here? What's different here than last year? This is an election
year.
Yeah.
There's money floating around.
And I like how nobody was saying a word about it until certain members of the media started reaching out asking about it. Nobody cared. Nobody had any comments.
Are you making money off of this? What is you doing?
And I think you got to
You see
get...
the ATM in the
I
back
know.
pocket?
For
every car.
a year, Jim Ziegler was the only person that was going after the toll roads.
Jim Ziegler is the troll under the bridge. You have to solve a riddle to get across.
Wait a minute. So the riddle then,
That is very disrespectful for my good friend Jim Ziegler.
the riddle then is, who's the dumbest politician in Alabama?
Wait a minute.
Is this
Wait
a
a
trick
minute.
question?
That is quite a list. Okay.
Yeah, well, I think
It'd
there's,
be hard to narrow that down,
Yeah, it
wouldn't
really
it?
would.
I
By
think,
the time you got to the end of the list, you could have taken the causeway.
and look,
I just don't understand what you're doing.
I think, from my perspective, this is part of the infrastructure package that we thought. John Cooper, who's the head of ALDOT, he was asked for this bridge. He supplied the bridge, and now they want to jump all over him. Like, kill the messenger, right? This is how we do it. But the deal is, and I'll say this, there may be another way. And we haven't heard from Governor Ivey. We haven't heard from the federal government. There may be a better way.
I just think that people are really kind of fed up with seeing their money go out and it not being put towards constructive things for their lives. And I think that's the biggest problem that they have here is, all right, we've paid for this gas tax. We're gonna implement that in a few years. We pay pretty low taxes. Let's get that straight. So that's part of the problem here. But you see this going out, and I think a lot of them see the congestion that's taking place here, and they've asked for help. And their help is, okay, we'll give you a bridge, but then you got to pay for it every single day.
Well, and I think that's kind of a capitalist way of looking at things. But again, if we really went by the majority of people that raise their voice in Alabama, we would still be riding on dirt roads, So I mean,
Probably so.
that wouldn't go so.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about something that absolutely positive for our state. The Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs, Susan, has committed to building a $60 million retirement home for veterans in the Wiregrass area. The folks down in the Wiregrass get to bid on this. But that we're making this investment. That's huge.
I think that's a fantastic deal. Both of us are children of veterans, and I see veterans coming down home now from Afghanistan, Iraq, who are actually homeless. I mean, this is a ridiculous epidemic, and especially when they get older, we owe it to them as Americans, not just Alabamians, to take care of them. They took care of us. So we owe it, and I'm very proud of this project.
Well, even though we have an all-volunteer army, they put their lives on the line. They do the hard work. They do the heavy lifting in foreign countries.
Some of these guys weren't volunteers. I mean, some of them weren't.
That's
Vietnam and stuff. And so
Right, exactly.
But regardless, we made a lot of promises on the front end to get these folks to go in and join up and do the fighting that we didn't want to do.
Right.
And so we owe a lot to them, just like the 9/11 guys that we owe a lot
Absolutely.
to currently as well. And so I'm happy to see that. We've had a lot of problems VA-wise around here, and I think that's a good step.
Well, it is always good to keep our promises. We make promises to these men and women who do put their lives on the line, whether they're voluntarily doing it or whether they have been drafted. And we're appreciative, and we salute the Alabama Veterans Affairs
Absolutely.
for making this happen.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back, and we're going to look at how sex and wife swapping and Andy Griffith are playing into the Senate race.
What a great opportunity for your success. Adding 500,000 highly skilled employees to our workforce by 2025 is how we stay ahead in Alabama. Our economy is stronger than it's been in years, and a skilled workforce is more important than ever. Things move fast, so choose your path. Your success is waiting, plus a great future for Alabama. Success Plus. Go for it.
The Energy Institute of Alabama promotes reliable, affordable, and clean energy to help grow our economy, create high-paying jobs, and build public support for Alabama's energy industry. Access to clean, affordable energy continues to be an issue of vital importance in the halls of government and around the kitchen tables across our nation. The Energy Institute of Alabama is the best source of energy industry information and how it affects households across the state. from convenient energy production to alternative fuels to solar power and beyond.
What are you doing today, babe?
I thought I'd head down to the lake with the guys, do a little fishing. Of course, none of us will be wearing our seatbelts. I'll lose control of the truck, wrap it around a tree, and kill us all.
Okay.
Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Susan, it seems like there's not a week goes by that we do not make national headlines. Or
Embarrassing national headlines.
Yes, absolutely.
We know no other way.
I think that Secretary of State Merrill is infinitely qualified for the job he has. I think John Merrill would make a great U.S. Senator from Alabama. But this last week, he was talking to a group at a town hall meeting, and he said that our television shows today were too fixated with the gay lifestyle and with wife swapping, and that we should, he'd love to see us return to more wholesome fare like Gunsmoke, Andy Griffith, Bonanza, The Virginian, I Love Lucy, and that type of thing. And I think there's a lot of people who have that sentiment, but there is also a falsity about that. Those shows were not real, and it didn't depict any type of real America. Mm. So it is like longing for a time that never exists. Now, I like Andy Griffith as well. No, maybe not as good as you do.
Of course
but
not.
The thing is we always have to catch our politicians pandering to the base.
And I love John Merrill, you know that, and I think he's, explicitly qualified for this position, but, it's not like him to stumble over words and get things wrong like he's done. He needs to back up a little bit before he says the things he's saying.
Things.
Because he's actually just embarrassing himself.
Well,
And this was an idealistic world. Andy Griffin, Bonanza, Gunsmoke, and we all watched them, but we all even understood as children. This was an idealistic kind of world. It wasn't real, although we should attain to those things or try to get there.
I have two questions. One, how the hell did the Virginian get in there?
I'm not even sure what the Virginian was about.
I don't know that I've ever watched it. Well, I have watched it, but
Wife swap? Wife swap wasn't about that. I mean, it wasn't.
It wasn't wife swing.
Yeah,
There was no sex or swinging or anything.
No.
Like you said earlier when we were talking, it was a social experiment.
Maybe he flipped over to Pornhub or something. I'm confused.
Yeah, which, by the way, for the wholesome state of Alabama, we're #1 in Pornhub viewership. So,
and STDs.
Yeah, and STDs. Got that going for us, which is great.
Well, but you can get those watching Andy Griffith,
no,
too. So.
There wasn't anything funny about
And
Howard Sprague.
Helen did have a little something going on there.
There wasn't anything unusual about Howard Sprague on Andy Griffith.
Right.
I don't know if anybody noticed.
Yeah, Howard Sprague. We've got a picture of here. Jonathan, if you'll go to the next one, there's Howard. There he is.
Hey, Howard.
Howard sang in the church choir.
Lived with his mother.
Lived with his mother, threw like a girl, as Andy said.
Yeah.
Opie said that.
Opie said
he threw like a girl.
And as our friend.
Just different.
And he said it was just a little different.
Just a little different. And, matter of fact, it was one of the lessons of the Andy Griffith Show, which is to treat everybody with respect and dignity. Mm-hmm. Which I guess in that way I can agree with John Merrill. Well, you had a sheriff who didn't want to carry a gun because he felt the gun would give him this false sense of superiority over the people, and they would respect the gun more than the sheriff. And there are all sorts of little lessons that we could learn today from the Andy Griffith Show. But yeah, Howard Sprague being one of them, which is no matter how off you might find somebody's lifestyle because it's different than yours, respect that person and let them live their lives.
And then we'll go to a hero of Alabama.
Gomer Pyle. Jim Neighbors.
Jim Neighbors.
Shazam.
There was one black person in Mayberry and at least 2 gays.
Right.
Yeah, so
like a
very
proper balance
realistic.
to me.
Very realistic.
And I want to know, what were the Cartwright boys all the way up to in Bonanza? I mean, there was 3 middle-aged guys. Their dad was like 5 years older than them. Right? Now, he had 3 sons by 3 different wives. Charlie, the guy would marry a woman, get her pregnant, she'd have a child, then she'd die. What kind of STD is that?
Were they in Alabama's healthcare system?
So, I mean, and all they ever did was go to town.
Maybe they were under the care of Dr. Death.
Exactly. Hey, and don't forget Miss Kitty.
Right.
I mean,
that Gunsmoke. Gunsmoke.
A brothel, for God's sake. This is the wholesome TV that we're supposed to return to.
It was James Arnezz's girlfriend.
She was a madam. Let's be PC.
How about we just respect everybody?
Why don't we?
That's an idea.
We trot out the culture wars every election season to see who can be more pure than the next one. I tell you what, watch Captain Kangaroo and Mr. Green Jeans, and then tell me about it.
Mr. Green Jeans was absolutely. Oh, you can watch Mr. Rogers. That was reality TV right there.
That is American to me. All right.
Has that sort of stuff ever really helped anybody get elected? I mean, has this sort of pandering nonsense really?
Just makes us look like a bunch of bigoted idiots down here.
I mean, is anybody in this state now going to go to the polls and say, I wasn't going to vote for that John Merrill, but since he said that about TV, I mean, does that work?
Probably not. But again, it's good talking points. And NBC News had Secretary Merrill on, and he actually sounded reasonable when he was in the interview. But again, can you just stop it already? Bradley Byrne comes out and he wants to pay to send the squad to Venezuela. He made national.
That was embarrassing, I have to say.
Now,
really,
there are a lot of people in Alabama who want to send AOC and the bunch to Venezuela and back to their countries. But
can we send them to Norway and see how that goes for them? And that's socialist.
Norway's a cool place. I like Norway.
Yeah.
It's just too dang cold.
No.
All right. Well, listen, we're gonna have to leave it right there. No, wait, we got one more thing. How's the Alabama Democratic Party faring, Josh?
Oh, look.
It's not going great.
Yeah.
It's been better.
Yeah.
And there was a poll today that came out that showed, that Governor Ivey took a hit off of the abortion bill that passed here.
17-point hit.
And I think that is a pretty good indication of where we're missing things in the Alabama Democratic Party here. There's a group of people out here in this state who can be reached by a viable second party, but there's not one. There's nobody reaching out to tell people what the Democrats' stance are, how they would fix things, what their platform would be, what their jobs opportunities would be, how they would go about protecting the average worker here. It's not there on a consistent basis, and this is the things that we're missing here.
They can't even get organized enough to do the nationally mandated elections they've been putting off and passing deadlines.
Well, they don't want to.
I know that.
They don't want to.
But
They're trying to hold
to.
off. They're trying to hold off because they're trying to hold on to the power of this thing here. And
they need to go.
I've said many times, I like Nancy Worley personally. I just think that they're past their time.
Okay, we're gonna have to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. When we come back, we're gonna look at how the church is working in justice reform.
Hey man, what are you doing today?
Playing the game. Thought I'd go out for a drive later maybe. Text some friends while I'm doing it. Scroll through social media. Kill a family 4 in a head-on collision.
Cool, man.
Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
A lot can change in 5 years. Except those smile lines you treated with Bellafill. Because that's about how long Bellafill will keep them smooth and filled. 5 years. Now you can always look your best without all those injections, appointments, and costs. Bellafill is the only dermal filler that stimulates and maintains collagen growth long term. Now time is on your side.
TV, the voice of Alabama politics. Charlie, you had something you wanted to get in there before we cut off last segment?
I did. All I really wanted to say, the DNC party, it's here in Alabama, it's seeped so far through the cracks that they got to the point where they got their own website shut down due to an unpaid bill. And as someone said beforehand, that's a disgrace to voters, people seeking information, people trying, access them. If they have any interest in the party, and it's awful.
It's just kind of a telling sign of where they are with things and the lack of kind of care that goes into everything here. And you're not, when you're on the bottom, you're going to have to fight so hard to get yourself back up to where you are. And, I hate to give him credit, but if you look at what Mike Hubbard did for resurrecting the Republican Party here, that he was, love him or hate him, and most people hate him, rightfully so, he was on the ball.
Yeah.
He had that. He had his stuff together, and he had a plan of attack. He worked that plan of attack. He put everybody in line and kept everybody in line, and they had a message to get out there every day. And the Democratic Party's got to do that. You don't have to do it illegally, but you have to. You should go about following.
All I'm saying is, in the age of technology, make sure your damn website works.
Actually, it's simpler than that. Check your email. Check your email, and you'll get the notice in there that something didn't go right with the credit card. Or,
and I
check
think
the email.
There's a point to be made here, broader point, as you were saying, but we're going to have to move on with the segment. Evangelist Scott Dawson recently wrote a column for the Alabama Political Reporter in which he talked about how church ministries are working within the prison systems, within the justice system, and with individuals when they're coming out of prison or before they go into prison, how they're doing good work to try to help people live their life outside of prison and to add comfort and aid to them when they are in prison. The premise that he made that on, Josh, which I thought was very powerful, is that he said being pro-life was very important. Protecting the unborn was very important to him. He said, but it also, you can't be pro-life and not be pro-all life. That's even the people whose lives don't seem to be worth as much because they've run afoul of the law. But he doesn't see it that way. He says that God looks at all life as having potential and being special, and that the church and the community should look at them. I don't hear that often.
No, and Dawson and his group should be congratulated for that work and what they're doing there. Obviously, I think he and I disagree on some other social issues there, and I've seen some of his stances on things. But that aside, I think that what he's done in the prisons and what he's talking about here is a good message for a lot of people to hear, because we do have a tendency to think of people who are in prison, once they go behind bars, it's like they're the worst people on earth. And for so many of them, that's not the case. A good number of those people have some mental health issues. A good number of those people are simply addicted to some form of drugs or another, and that's how they got themselves into that position that they're in. They stole something to support that habit or whatever, and I think a lot of people are slowly starting to realize how that affects people. As the opioid epidemic kind of sweeps through and catches some white people in its grasp there, people are starting to understand, hey, you know what? The crack epidemics and those other things that took place in the 80s and 90s, I bet they were a lot like this, and that's true, and that's how we ended up in this spot.
Well, and Susan, I think one of the things that Evangelist Dawson and I talked about was how this plays into the overall picture that we must have criminal justice reform. And Governor Kay Ivey is, we believe, going to call a special session in January, not to address building prisons, but to address the criminal justice system. There's only two ways to, handle prison overcrowding. That's how many people go in, how many people get out. And the idea here is to start on the front end. Who's going in? And one of the things we talked about with lawmakers is, does the punishment fit the crime? And that's one of the things, because we're harsh on punishment, and if we were good at this, we wouldn't have so much recidivism.
Right, exactly. And once you start taking drug court and all of that into the play here, which has been very effective, we can have other programs like that would work to, divert people from going into jail, which, once they go into prison, once they get out, 1 out of 5 is going to, go right back in. So if we've got some programs on the front end, have some programs on the back end as well when they come out. I think this is a smart way to do it. I mean, we've got to address this to keep them out of prison to start with and to keep them from going back. And if they can get that in the study group that she's putting together, I think that's a fantastic way to start.
And people, I'm so thankful people are finally starting to, people have always realized, but just how important that rehabilitation is. I mean, what's going to rehabilitate a person better than, being listened to and welcomed back into public life and, cared? That's what they need. So I'm so thankful they're finally doing it.
Well, there's so many, and I work with female nonviolent offenders coming out of Tutwiler for many, many years. And then the things that people don't realize is these people don't know how to balance a checkbook. They don't know how to set their alarm to get up to go to work. And that, instead of having to deal with all this, it's just easier to go steal something. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have those programs in place to get them from this prison life back into real life, they're gonna reoffend,
right.
And they'll go right back into the system.
And I think, Josh, one of the things we've talked about is you've got to have a holistic approach. You've got to, who are you putting in? Can you categorize them into what they need when they get there? There's a whole lot of things that go into that.
Yeah, sure there is. And I think one of the biggest factors in all this is education and the education that's available to the young people that are there. And so until you fix a lot of that problem on the front end, you're still going to have these folks that fall into these gaps because poverty plays a pretty big role into that, and education is one of the biggest deciding factors in poverty as well. And so but I'll tell you a good way that we could solve a lot of this right immediately is to legalize marijuana and make it retroactive.
Right.
And that would release a whole bunch of people who are currently in jail.
And I think that's a part of the plan. I also think there's some other non-violent offenses. I always think about the guy that steals your car and wrecks your car. Well, all I want is my car back. I want my car paid for. I want my car back, and I want him to have to pay some extra. I don't necessarily want to go to jail. I want to pay some money out.
And I want to get to this point before we end the segment, and it's something Josh said about education, and I know for a fact because we've talked with Kay Ivy's people that this is part of her overall plan that starts with pre-K and goes all the way through to adulthood. And that means addressing, if you don't educate them young, then they're probably going to drop out, which means your crime rate goes up, which means your prison population goes up, and all of that. So what the plan she's working on right now goes through all of that.
That's going to have to be the last word. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.